Hi, you're with Jason at the TVRC channel. Thank you very much for choosing to stop in and check out this video today. And on the bench I have in front of me here are two Kyosho ULTIMA RB Type Rs. Now, there's such an interesting story that goes beyond just what the parts that we see here, and it continues to amaze me, the generosity of some people out there and the support that I get. Now, I'm not a big YouTube channel, and but I appreciate the engagement that I do get, and you know, I continue plugging away, and I think some of the viewers can actually see that. So this particular viewer contacted me, and he doesn't want to be known. He's asked to be incognito. So for the purpose of this video, I'm going to relate to this gentleman as the mysterious benefactor. He actually sent me in a Kyosho ULTIMA RB Type R, which would be this car over here. I'm pretty sure that's the one he sent in first. So what happened was he messaged me and said, look, I'm sending you something, and I thought, I don't know what he didn't tell me what he was sending. He just said, look, it's going to be a surprise, so don't get too excited. I might not thank him when it turns up. So anyway, I'm opening up the box, and I could see beyond the bubble wrap the kit box, which I have over here on my right hand side, which is of course the RB Type R kit box. And what I noticed on the side of the kit box was that it had a sticker that said Evolution, and unbeknownst to me, I didn't even know there was a difference with these cars. Going back into, I'm going to say, around about 2000, I had been a little while out of racing back then, because my racing career with Bormac had ended around 92, something like that. The last car I actually had out on track was the Kyosho Triumph. So whatever, that was a brand new car back then, and I don't even know if I actually got to race an actual meeting. But anyway, I had the Turbo ULTIMA previous to that, and I was already aware of the ULTIMA Pro and the Pro XL. So to me, the ULTIMA name always had some kind of heritage. I always knew that it was a decent build from Kyosho, and anything with the ULTIMA name attached to it, I'm sure was going to be a great car. Yes and no, some will agree, and that's a great debate to have, because they started moving into Kelron plastic chassis, and they went away from the graphite or the fiberglass or whatever we want to call it, and they just started to sort of cheapen the platform, and the RB didn't escape that process either. So here in Australia, the only Kyosho ULTIMA I remember being around back then was the RB Sport, and it was nothing really to be excited about. It just went away from all the quality components that I was used to with the Kyosho ULTIMA cars, and you know, they just had lowered the bar, in my opinion. And sorry if this offends anyone who owns one, but yeah, I just thought it was really lacking for the ULTIMA name. But then, little did I realise, I seen at some point in magazines that the ULTIMA RB Type R was available, and I mean, the image alone, the box art image, just sold that car. I didn't even know a thing about it. I just loved the artwork on the box. I thought it was the coolest thing. It was a very clever marketing shot, in my opinion, and I'm sure when you see it yourself, you'll know what I mean. But yeah, so there was actually a more specific race bred of ULTIMA still around, which was the Type R. So on my right here, I actually have the original Type R. So, and not to in any way dumb that down, because it was still a fantastic car. It really did lift the bar. It had better shocks and better components, and you know, a proper transmission, a good ball diff, you know, universal shafts, all those things. But at some point after that, was the ULTIMA RB Type R Evolution, which is the car on my left-hand side, which, you know, went from being I think maybe a plastic resin injected chassis to graphite, as far as I found out so far. I've been doing some research online just to learn the differences, the nuances that go from making the Type R to the Type R Evolution. And, you know, they are things like, of course, the motor plate for the gearbox housing, you know. So the standard version was just nice and flush, and then of course the Evolution had this really cool machining put in the back of it, so to act as a heatsink. And you know, there are other bits and pieces. There are improvements with the diffs being lighter, even as far as even the slipper plates are even machined differently. And the one for the Evolution is actually more lightweight than the standard version that came. You know, the CVDs versus Universals. You know, the shock towers even had more holes on the Evolution than they did on the standard car. And it kind of reminds me when they went from the B2 to the B3. I had the B3 team car, I think it might have been back then, so it didn't have all of the blue bits, it had the black bits on it, but you know, it was a pretty cool car. And I think the difference going from the B2 to the B3 to maybe the B3 factory team or whatever it was from Associated, I'm sure that Kyosho did similar things with this car right here. So there are some telltale signs. So what I wanted to do in this video is build up both cars, and as I'm building them, show the viewing audience all the little differences and nuances that I've found so far. And you know, if I miss anything, by all means, if you know more about the RB Type R, whether it be the standard or the Evolution, definitely get in the comment section and have your say, because I'm interested to learn more. And there are people out there who still own these cars or would have had a history in racing these cars. And you know, the more information we can get out there and share, the more factual information that's available to the viewing audience and the vintage community as a whole, you know, the more we learn, the more we appreciate, you know, how these things were cool and still are cool in a lot of ways. So yeah, one other big thing I noticed was, of course, the fasteners. So on the standard version, they had a lot of self-tapping screws with Phillips head, which was pretty standard for Kyosho, even right back into the Optima series that I remember, and the Ultima series. Whereas the Evolution were running an M3 machined screws with a hex drive head. So if you pick up one of your cars and you notice that it's got Phillips heads versus the hex drive, you may have more of a clue as to what version you have. But anyway, I don't want to waffle on too much further here in front of the camera. I really want to get over to the bench behind me and start installing all the components on these chassis. And as I do the build, I'll go through and I'll show you the differences, and you can see for yourself. And I'm hoping that this video serves as a really good basis to those who want to know or do know or want to share. You know, it's all just about sharing. It's not even about showing off or look what I have. It's not that. It's just about continuing to build the information that's out there within the RC community. So with no further ado, see you over at the bench. Just having a bit of a close look at these chassis, I can notice the one on the right-hand side, which being the EVO chassis, is a lighter shade of grey, and I'm thinking that's indicating that it is a higher graphite content in that composite material. And these alloy rear plates are identical, so there's no difference. Onto the rear bulkhead now, just fitting off these ball studs for the camber links, followed by a pin that allows this battery strap to pivot on that bulkhead, just ahead of it being bolted down to the chassis pan itself, which I'm doing via some stainless steel hex drive hardware, which is what I tend to use on all my cars. Now, looking at the rear shock tower here, you'll notice that the standard version has 3 holes and the EVO has 4 holes, plus a moulding difference. Now onto the rear steel diff outdrives, noticing the EVO ones have been lightened. And those are the lay shafts. We're going to talk about those again soon. And you can see what I mean here by that cover plate for the slipper, which also has this ring that goes on the outside to hold the spur true. And let's have a bit of a look at these components here ahead of assembling. So those are the 2 transmissions ready to go. I've got some ball diff silicone grease there, and we're going to start with some black moly grease, which goes on the thrust race prior to that screw being inserted into the steel outdrive. And I always put a little bit of silicone diff grease on the back of the diff rings, and I like to fill the holes of the ball diff center, putting it together there, and then I can drop the tungsten carbide diff balls here into the diff center and then pushing them into the grease, making it easier for assembly. There's a solid steel T-nut there with that thrust race tensioner spring, and what I'm doing here is I'm locking up the left hand outdrive and I'm holding the center gear, adjusting the ball differential, and I'm checking it's for smooth operation here, just rolling it left and right, but I'm twisting and adjusting that tensioner screw, and just to a point where it doesn't actually slip. So that's the way to correctly adjust a ball differential. You don't want any slip, so I'm just taking up every last little bit there, and I may even say the last bit for when I actually drive the car. So I'll get it to the track, I'll test the ball diff tension, and I'll adjust it there. So onto these lay shafts, you'll see the standard version has the M3, the thinner lay shaft there, and the EVO has the M4. So I've just never seen that before. That seems to be a really late model setup they've got there. So that's all of the gears going into the transmission housing, and I'm just applying a little bit of ball diff silicone grease here to the gears and rolling them through the gearbox and snapping the cases together. And there's a close-up there of the components that make up the last of assembling these transmissions. And there they are all set up there, and then you can see the EVO transmission with the heatsink. I've laid out all the suspension components here just to have a bit of a quick look across the small differences between the two cars. And the EVO ran the CVDs and the standard version ran the universal shafts. That was about the very few things that I noticed with the suspension on these cars here, other than these little pins in these inner hinge pin blocks here. But the standard version allowed you to put the pins in, which I did, and the EVO had those flats on those pivot shafts. So here I am just keying those pins into the aluminium plate. Just helps you locate them better, and I really like that idea. So I did that with both cars. And there we are with the EVO on the right, standard on the left. And what you'll notice as well is that the EVO came standard with the little foam donuts, and they, I guess, they protect dust from going inside of the ball cup. So, yeah, that was a standard fitment on that car also, which I thought was pretty cool. And here we are with the front ends all assembled. Now, the non-EVO version car came with these front C hubs that are off the RB5, so maybe that was a choice that previous owner did, but yeah, I decided I wanted to do my car completely standard, so the EVO has the standard setup on it. Now onto the front steering bell cranks here, and the aluminium post has a flat on it which just keys into that lower portion, and then you wind down that steering servo saver until you get the desired height that's mentioned in the manual. And we're just starting to put these front ends together now. The standard version had either, I'm pretty sure it actually only had plastic spaces to go in there. Well, I ended up putting in these little bronze bushes because I didn't have any more bearings, but the EVO did come with bearings as standard, so it's nice to see that they did go the extra mile and make it ball raced in the EVO. But yeah, that can be done to the standard version also. Now, I did cross-reference both manuals, so the standard version and the EVO, and I double-checked literally every component. I wanted to make sure these cars went back together exactly as per the manual. Yeah, I'm very impressed with the cars. They do have a really high quality, which includes the shock absorbers. Now, these shock absorbers are next to none. I mean, they really are the very best shock absorbers I think I've worked on. They're just so smooth. Well, let's just say older shock absorbers. And if anybody out there knows more about these shock absorbers than I do, I don't know which version deserved what O-ring seals, but when I pulled them down and cleaned them, they were all just mixed up in a jar together. So I just ended up putting all the square blue seals on the standard version and the clear O-ring seals on the EVO version. And there they are, all assembled with the clips in place, making very sure to make sure those clips aren't going to come loose. And just fixing off now the E-clips onto the pistons of the gold shafts, which came standard in the Evolution. But I did polish up the non-EVO shafts, so I wet sand and polish those shafts, and they are uber smooth. So yeah, very smooth, very velvety, smooth, beautiful shock absorbers. Also, there are some O-rings on some of these blue alloy housings there, and before I wound them into the housing, I applied a little bit of oil. I just don't like them binding up and having any issues, so I like to have a really good seal. And yeah, so there they are going together. They really are gorgeous looking shock absorbers, and I can see why people like them as much as they do. There you go, just to really send that message home, oiling up those O-rings there. And I didn't actually fill the shocks up until after assembling them all and just getting them assembled with these O-rings. I just wanted to make sure that they all fit nicely and everything fits flush and nothing's binding, so I could make sure all the shocks went together. And then I pulled the shock caps back off, and I went for 35 weight front and 30 in the rear. That's my basis, that's where I start from, and I adjust from there. Maybe people have preferences going up to 40, 45 or down to 25, but yeah, here they are all assembled on the cars, pretty much ready to go. And what a build they were. I'm very impressed with Kyosho on this, and in my opinion, having owned a B3 and now the Type R, I definitely prefer the Kyosho. Thanks for watching.